2014. This is Dr. King's Day. That's why I was a little befuddled there. I'm awed by the majesty of this day, January 15th. And this is the Talk of Chicago, 1690 WVON, Salim MuWakkil show. You can also catch us streaming loud and clear by using iHeart apps on your smartphones or tablets, or by directing your browser to WVON.com. I greet you live from WVON's Xfinity Studios on a seasonable Wednesday evening. Privileged once again to have the pleasure of connecting to America's most astute radio audience. Well, today is the 85th anniversary of the natal day of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the man that we all celebrate as the leading force of this nation's civil rights revolution, and a man who embodied positive virtues, tolerance. But the King that we celebrate is actually, a caricature of the man himself. Although the King that the public knows and celebrates is still a man of great character and courage, he is not the King who is the most magisterial, the man who connected America's imperialistic foreign policy to corporate dictates. He helped us understand that America's foreign policy was, in fact, the handmaiden of corporations, the capitalist institutions that were seeking profit. He's the gentleman who won the Nobel Peace Prize in '64, but he's also the man who told a crowd at the Riverside Church in '67 that the U.S. war in Vietnam was on the wrong side of history and the wrong side of a world revolution. And in response to those who complained that his opposition to the Vietnam War was disconnected from his civil rights work, which is a lot of stuff that we hear these days, he said, quote, we were taking the black young men who had been crippled by our society and sending them 8,000 miles away to guarantee liberties in Southeast Asia, which they had not found in Southwest Georgia or East Harlem, unquote. Now, this King, he said he could never again raise his voice against the violence of the oppressed in the ghettos. People talking about the violence of the ghettos, black on black crime. We hear much of that today. He said he couldn't speak against that without having first spoken clearly to the greatest purveyor of violence in the world today, my own government. Now, these were not the words of a man who was safely resting on his laurels. He had won the Nobel Peace Prize, and everyone kind of celebrated him. But he became increasingly critical of American foreign policy, not just specific, policies, specific kinds of policies toward various nations, but the general tenor of American foreign policy. He would have been extremely critical of our adventures in Iraq and Afghanistan. And because his critical comments had the moral weight of his reputation, King proved to be a great irritant to the Washington establishment. He would have been a great irritant to the Obama administration. At the time, he was an irritant to both the liberals and the conservatives, and the media as well. Time magazine, which in 1964 named him the Person of the Year, for his noble works in fighting against racial segregation. But in '67, it declared that that speech that he made against the Vietnam War sounded like a script for Radio Hanoi. Now, Hanoi was the capital of North Vietnam, our enemy at the time. And so Time seemed to be saying that he was acting like a traitor. Now, where do we hear those kind of traitor talks today? We hear it like in Snowden, Edward Snowden, anybody who reveals the nefarious undertakings of this government. King was boldly exposing the unsavory motives that animate much of our foreign policy. He said that the war in Vietnam is just a symptom of a far deeper malady within the American spirit. He was serious. We'll get back to this when we come back from this break. And we're back. It is 6:21. Salim MuWakkil here. King said that Vietnam was just a symptom of a deeper malady within our spirit. He was speaking kind of to the militaristic impulse that seemed to be a deep part of this country. You know, we were a belligerent nation. We were in league with the colonialists. We wanted to put down any kind of effort to for these oppressed countries, these colonized countries, to assert their own independence and assume control over their own resources. And that was part of our malady. That was the malady that King talked about, and how we simply exploited those weaknesses. And King said, we will be marching for these and a dozen other names and attending rallies without end. Other names other than Vietnam he was talking about. Now, what was the profound change that King was urging us? He said that we must rapidly begin shifting from a thing-oriented society to a person-oriented society. He said when machines and computers, even then he was saying computers, and profit motive and property rights are considered more important than people, the giant triplets of racism, militarism, and economic exploitation are incapable of being conquered. Now, he had no idea, I think, King had no idea of just how dominant this logic of profit motive and property rights would become in this society. We have been absolutely consumed with those notions. The neoliberal conceits have sunk into our society and embedded themselves into our psyche. We don't even think of any alternative anymore than this profit motive, this profit-oriented society that we're doing. And much of our foreign policy is crafted to accommodate corporations based on that profit motive, and they refuse to give up these enormous profits of overseas investments. And this is what King was pointing out then. He was pointing it out. It's become even more exaggerated since then. He said, our need to maintain social stability for those investments are what accounts for our counter-revolutionary actions in many of these third world countries. This is what he told the crowd in '67. Now, this is, sophisticated political analysis. It was truly revolutionary rhetoric at the time, and plumbing directly to the center of the corporate motives of our foreign policy. We were told at the time that, we were the force for democracy. We wanted to liberate nations under the oppression of other foreign domination. But really what we wanted was profit. And it's no wonder, and King made this plain, it was no wonder that the political and media establishment at the time wanted him to shut up. They wanted this man quiet. And so, the FBI and all of these surveillance agencies, the NSA, went after him. And, after COINTELPRO came out, it was, we found out that he was being monitored in virtually every aspect of his life. People were attempting to sabotage his relationships with clandestine messages to people he knew, alleging certain kinds of questionable behavior. But since that time, American society has moved even more toward that materialistic mindset that King condemned. Because during King's era, the socialist bloc offered some philosophical and some material competition to the market orientation of the U.S., the capitalist, profit-oriented activities of the U.S. But the fall of the socialist bloc and and that fall that has really kind of discredited socialist ideology, that has embodied the market and then left it unopposed, unopposed and victorious, and marching through the world, causing havoc. Right now, we got this Trans-Pacific Partnership getting ready to do the same thing. We made labor global, and capital, capital is still based in certain kind of countries, and so people with capital can seek the lowest labor market, the lowest cost for the labor that they can find, and so that pits workers in every country against workers in every other country, fighting for the lowest wage possible. It's one of those strange dynamics that finds us, the working people, at the beck and call, really, of capital. They have it. So that's even more so than during the Cold War days of Dr. King. This profit motive makes the world go round, and that distinction is important to keep in mind today, as we watch so many of King's ideological children, those folks who have gained a certain aspect of freedom because of his sterling efforts, we're beginning to abandon many of the principles that he once propounded. The idea that the U.S. is the primary purveyor of violence is something many of us just, don't even think about anymore, no matter how many drones we read about. Because primarily, especially for King's heirs, that those mechanisms of violence are now headed by a black man, who is also one of King's heirs. And ironically, he's the kind of black man that King would have urged support for, I'm sure, in his quest for political equality. But now he is acting in ways that King strongly condemned in his other guise as a fighter for global justice and peace. It is a strange situation where we see so many of our people who now can praise King on one hand, and yet completely abandon his principled call for a global sense of equality, equity, and justice. We seem to have totally forgotten that. Even when people like Edward Snowden reveal what this country is up to, even more so than it was during the era of King, doing the same kinds of things he condemned. Yet, rather than understand how Snowden falls into this, how he helps us understand the excesses and how we've been exploited in some ways and violated by the actions of this profit-seeking government that is using our war machine on the behest of our corporate leadership. We see how that's happening, and yet we don't seem to be concerned. And it's a very, very troubling situation. And I think that something like the King's Day anniversary gives us a chance to reflect a little bit on just how far we've strayed from that, and why we need to kind of reassert our principles. And we'll talk to you about that and many other things when we come back from this break and from the lovely Robin Lewis's news. We'll be back. Welcome back. It is 6:38 on the Talk of Chicago, 1690 WVON. And let's go to the phones, and we can keep this conversation going. George, good evening. How are you, my brother?
How you doing, Salim?
I'm well, man. Well.
Oh man, that was great to hear from you. Yeah. I was listening to what you were saying, and so very true. MLK, Martin Luther King, doctor, probably one of the most dynamic individuals of the 20th century.
Yes, sir.
African American. And one of the things that he said that really a redistribution of wealth. He talked about.
He sure did.
And it was very strong. But Salim, I just was thinking about Dr. King, because see, I was a kid And I remember when he came on the scene, because I remember watching my grandmother's television, and actually it was during the bus boycott, Rosa Parks, and he came on with his little hat, and he was a very well-spoken individual. I mean, he was, and being young, and I always liked the spoken word and intellectuals, because he was a guy that used 4-syllable words very easily, just rolled off his tongue.
Oh yeah, he was intellectual, no doubt about it. Right.
And
that's an often underplayed aspect of his persona. His thesis was. When he was in school, he was really into the intellectual aspect of religion and ecclesiastical study and whatnot. He was a deep brother.
Yes, and then I was thinking, and then I remember a few years. Well, it was a couple of years later, he was giving a book signing in New York, and some lady tried to stab him. As a matter of fact, she was an African American lady. Mm-hmm. They claimed that she was mentally ill, and that was before he actually got out of the starting blocks,
That's
as
right.
using a track and field metaphor. But, I tell you, man, I have to believe the government played a part. And I hear this gentleman, Siddiqui, talking about it all the time on the radio. But, like you said, when he gave that sermon, that speech at the Riverside Church in New York, do you know that was actually almost a year to the date that this man was assassinated?
It was indeed, and it was certainly 2 weeks before that. J. Edgar Hoover had come out with a very explicit kind of instructions to his agents to watch out for black messiahs and whatnot.
Yeah, and like you say, and then that Sunday before, because I can remember those dates, because we would sit at my grandmother's house every morning, Sunday morning, when she would cook breakfast and everybody would come around. And that Sunday, the Sunday's paper was talking about how the violence, broke out at the march for the garbage worker strike in Memphis. And, and then later on that Sunday evening, and LBJ gave a speak saying that he would not run for the presidency or accept a nomination. And then that Thursday, about 7 o'clock or 7:30 Chicago time, this man is killed. These seem like too much coincidences, don't they, to you?
Well, hey, brother, when you look back in retrospect, it seems right. It seems too much of a coincidence to simply accept as a coincidence. They seem to be, they seem to be too intentional, man, and even clinically intentional, like the timing and whatnot. Like you pointed out, a year after his 67 speech.
That's what I'm saying.
All of these things seem to be a little bit more too calculated to be accidental.
Absolutely, because the words in my mind keep going back. It's like somebody sitting there saying the die was cast. We're going to take this guy out, let him go a year, and they're going to take him out.
Yes, sir.
It's crazy, man. Well,
indeed. Thank you, brother. Appreciate the call.
Thank you, Salim.
All right, let's go to Reese. Reese, how are you?
How you doing, brother? I'm always glad to hear your voice, and
thank you.
But I do have a couple of issues here.
Okay.
I hope you remember to remain strong, even though you're on that program on TV. It seemed like they mild you down some.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. That's what it looked like on TV. Like you humbled and all that. But nonetheless, on the issue of King, the first person who articulated the rules of affirmative action in terms of reciprocity and justice and that sort of thing, and how those same words, affirmative action, have been turned into, even though they're talking directly against King's issues, have been turned on us as if it's some sort of handout, as opposed to justice. You see what I mean?
Oh, yeah. I mean, just like in many ways the way they're trying to use Mandela.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. The Mandela issue is a big issue, and it's a big issue for us, really. But that's only because at this time we don't punish treason. Those who practice treason against us are allowed to sometimes.
The problem with that, though, is when you say treason, generally there's a well designed polity that you're treasonous to. There's a well-designed ideology or some sort of doctrine to which you're treasonous. We don't have anything that is that well-designed that we can
Oh, sure we do. Sure we do. I mean, the charter of the OAU speaks clearly to all of these issues. And
but all of us don't subscribe to that charter. You can't hold people accountable to treasonous activity if they don't subscribe to a particular charter that you may subscribe to.
The punishment should still be meted out because.
Who authorizes the punishment?
Well, that's an issue for the OAU, right?
Well, yeah, but I mean, who? But see, there's only a few people who belong to the OAU, and if
well, I would think it's the people who are left, right? Because it's we know that Gaddafi, and we know that the brother that was president of Mozambique. There's no people like that. The brother who runs Zimbabwe. All I'm saying is that it seems that certain the rules, should be followed. That's all. I mean, this guy Snowden, they want to track him to the ends of the earth, right?
They do.
Yeah. I mean, for telling the truth, for exposing the reality of the situation, right?
Yes, sir.
So. So anyway, I say all that to say that we need to remember the issues that were put out for us, the goals that Dr. King had articulated for us to achieve, including affirmative action, and all those who speak against affirmative action should be denounced for what they are, right?
Okay.
So that's the best way to put that.
All right, Brother Reese. Thank you, man.
Thank you for letting me talk.
Yes, sir. Thank you. All right, yeah. I hear what Brother Reese is saying, and that's what the conservatives do. And that's a lot of what has happened to Dr. King, is that a lot of his message has been appropriated by others who have other kinds of agenda. When he would say that the content of our character is more important than the color of our skin, the affirmative action foes have seized upon that to discredit affirmative action, because they would say that affirmative action is based upon the color of your skin, and so it is at variance with King's message talking about the content of our character. And so they would take a statement of his that is certainly parallel to the need for affirmative action, because he often spoke about that, and yet convert it to their own agenda, to their own ideology, which is anti-affirmative action, and they're so make them much more enthusiastic about supporting him, because it seemingly supports their view, and their view is, of course, the exact opposite of what his view is, and that is how they do it, and of course that's exactly what they were trying to do with Nelson Mandela. After his death, he was recast as this pillow tossing this pillow tossing peace seeker, and that was about it. Okay, we'll talk about this. We have a lot of calls. We're going to get to them, and we will right after this break. 6:52. Some researchers have reportedly found that advanced cellular aging and experience high amounts of racial discrimination is high. It is accelerated. Racism may cause accelerated aging, and that's what they found, that this advanced cellular aging among black men who experience high amounts of racial discrimination and who held self-hatred attitudes. So we can, I think, reasonably conclude that Clarence Thomas has very advanced cellular aging. We examine a biomarker of systematic aging known as leukocyte telomere length, said Dr. David Che, an epidemiology assistant professor at the University of Maryland and the study's lead investigator. They found that African-American men who experienced greater racial discrimination who displayed a stronger bias against of those studies studies. And telomere length is an indicator of biological age, which can give us insight into the variations in the cumulative wear and tear of the organism's net of chronological age, Che said. A shortened telomere length has been linked to greater risk of premature death and diseases such as diabetes and stroke. And so high racism, experiences of racism shorten your telomeres. So they've actually found a way of quantifying how people are affected by these attitudes. Interesting. Back to the phones we go. Steve, good evening. How are you, my brother?
How you doing this evening, Sling?
Doing well.
All right. Yeah, I want to keep hammering this home. I was looking at the Pentagon bill, and once again, it's $40 billion committed to Israel again, and yet they're sitting here catfighting over a measly $6 billion to extend unemployment benefits to Americans.
Yes.
And it's an amazing spectacle to watch, and to see this happening, and nobody's outraged about it. And they had another thing about they just did a deal where the Pentagon is going to sell these F-18 fighter helicopters to Israel for $1.3 billion. And I'm saying to myself, how is Israel going to buy something from the United States and we funding them? The point I'm making, Salim, is this. They can give the helicopters to Israel and won't nobody object to it, but they're trying to make like Israel is buying military equipment from us with our money. That's our money.
That's right.
And it's amazing how they print this stuff and send this stuff out there like as if Israel is like maybe a Saudi Arabia or some other country that may be buying stuff from us, with their money. We fund it and we give them billions of dollars, and yet they try to make it like Israel is buying military stuff from us.
But it's even worse. It's even worse than that, Steve. They're buying from Northrop Grumman and SY Coleman Technologies, and the Bechtel Group, and all of those those defense contractors that claim to be private corporations and not beneficiaries of welfare. And we are, in fact, as you point out, giving Israel the money to buy arms from these corporations that are U.S. corporations who are, in fact, being paid by U.S. citizens. So it really is an insidious relationship that we have there, brother. Insidious.
Exactly. And as they sit here and cut, and it's, man, and I just, I know I'm lucky to, have a job, but I'm just knowing and how hard it is for me to keep my job and just let alone people that don't have one. And then they talking about cutting, these programs and not extending these, but at the same time extending billions to Egypt. And it's just, it's sad. I just think the only thing that's going to happen, Salim, is an uprising that's going to have to change this stuff, because this is getting way out of control.
Who do you think is going to do the uprising, Steve?
Yeah, it's going to be an uprising.
Who do you think?
I give it back. I'll give it before 2020. It's going to be an uprising.
Who do you think is going to do the uprising?
The middle class and the lower class is going to have to.
You think so?
Because what's amazing, Salim, is that as long as people have certain benefits, you can keep pulling things over their head. But when you take away all of those benefits, they have no other reason but to pay attention. And that's what I think these corporations and these rich people are doing. I think they're overplaying their hand. Because once you do that, and if a person don't have no ability to go out and get nothing to eat or to pay, the basic bills, they have no other choice but to pay attention and to look for somebody to blame and to take it out on.
I think you're right, Steve. But I also think that the corporations know that. I think that they are aware of the dynamics of social discord and how that can happen, and so they would, just as they did during the New Deal, they will realize that they have to invest in society in ways and reduce their profits just a bit to keep the masses from doing exactly what you say. When the masters feel that they have no choice, no options, they will do exactly what you point out, that there will be increasing social discord. And, groups will begin to gather and organize in opposition to the government. And that's a very dangerous situation. And so I think that the corporations will realize that. People are telling them that right now. In fact, that's really the dynamic of American society, capitalist society. What happens is we reach that crisis point. Capitalists realize that they have to make some sort of accommodations. And so they extend the crisis point to another time in the future. And then they'll do it again. So, that's kind of the pattern that we've been in. So I think you're right, my brother, and I appreciate the call. Thank you, man. Brother Steve. And we will come back to the other callers and continue this excellent conversation when we come back. 707, Salim MuWakkil here. I want to talk from Chicago on January 15th, the anniversary of the birthday of Dr. Martin Luther King. We will celebrate it officially on January 20th, which is Monday. So get ready for that, y'all. There was a shooting in a Florida movie theater. I'm sure you've probably heard about it by now. A guy named Curtis Reeves, a retired police captain, got angry at this guy who was texting in the movie theater. I don't know why he got angry at him texting. I guess because of the light of the device, because, texting, you don't really say anything. So he wouldn't have been bothering him audibly, disrupting the audible portion of the movie. So it was simply, I guess, the light that upset this guy, Curtis Reeves. He killed Chad Olson for doing that. They had a disagreement. This guy Reeves protested the texting. Olson said he's texting his daughter. He had to do it, and it flared into an argument, and Olson got shot. When I first heard about it, I thought it sounded so unreasonable. I thought there was probably some racial component, and that one of the participants was, of a different race than the other. But it turns out that both of them were white guys from this part of Florida. One was a retired police captain, and he just got mad and shot the guy. And there's research coming out now that this guy had a previous run-in with someone at a movie over the same issue of texting. It wasn't quite a run-in. Words weren't exchanged, but there was some tensions that were displayed. So this is an interesting incident. It touches on a lot of things. I'm sure that something like what's that? Stand your ground law may come into it some way, and then of course the whole texting issue. How should we regard texting? How intrusive should it be? All of these issues are touched on. Very interesting. Back to the phones we go. Excuse me. Trudy, it's you. Good evening. Trudy?
Hey, Salim, how you doing?
I'm well. How are you doing?
That's great. Look, I was reading about that TPP today.
Mm-hmm.
I went to a website called Resist TPP.
Yes.
I Googled it, and there was quite a bit of information, but I didn't read it all.
Trans-Pacific Partnership.
Uh-huh. Have you heard of a trade act called, it's spelled CANAMEX? I guess it's CANAMEX.
Have I heard of a what now called CANAMEX?
A trade
group.
No. Like NAFTA.
Yeah. It's a part of this. It's a component of the TPP.
Yeah, okay. Because I read that in the article, and I found something disturbing about it. It said that through the TPP, it's going to be like China and the South American countries, they'll be able to circumvent domestic courts, such as health or environmental laws.
Yeah,
All they have to.
Yeah, their corporations will be able to supersede those kinds of environmental restrictions on certain kinds.
And also health laws too.
Exactly right. That's true.
Okay, if it threatens their profit, that's disturbing, Salim.
It's very disturbing. Absolutely.
Right.
And they're going to really be focus on patent rights. They're going to be able to patent seeds and whatnot that will restrict access to those seeds, and they'll be very strict on these kinds of privacy. They really want to get that done with China because China has a reputation of,
right, and they're buying everything over here anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But they were saying in the article that NAFTA already sucked out most of the jobs in this Canamax. It took some more, so I guess it's been in operation and we haven't known about it. But people are constantly yelling about jobs. Now, if this TPP goes through, we're going to really be in bad shape. So, we don't need jobs. What we need is capital, because the corporations here, there's not enough here to provide the jobs that the people need. So we need capital to start our own manufacturing.
That's true. But they have all the capital that they have more capital than enough to provide every American with a job. But it wouldn't be as profitable for them, so they take the capital where the labor is the cheapest and invest their capital.
The banks are not lending to people with new ideas and things like that. They're keeping everything clogged up. So these old ideas, oil and gas, can stay in place. That's the way I feel about it, Swing.
Well, yeah, that's because they are trying to reap as much profit as they can from these old technologies, these old fuel sources before they give out, before they're no longer as profitable as they used to be. But they're also investing very, very lucrative, very heavily, let us say, in alternative energy sources as well. Don't let them fool you. Don't let
you
it
mean
get twisted.
China?
The corporations in this country are investing very heavily in alternative energy sources, but we're just not getting the benefits of it. They are partnerships, many partnerships that they're developing with China. They want to see how they want to test the market out, and they're using China because China's ready to take a risk, because they can risk capital a lot easier than the West can.
But it seems to me, Salim, that the rich just want to stay rich and they don't want anybody else to have anything, and they always talking about pull yourself up by your bootstraps when you don't have no straps, and they know they've done everything to keep you from having bootstraps.
Yes, ma'am. You got it.
Okay, thank you, Salim.
All right, Trudy, thank you. All right. Yes, indeed. It's a structural dynamic. Like in this particular country, we see income disparity wider now than ever before in history. That's what the economists tell us. One of the reasons for that, of course, is that in the 70s, when the wealthy in this country decided to become much more involved in crafting public attitudes and marketing public attitudes and think tanking public attitudes, since that has happened and began to happen, governmental structures have been redesigned to channel wealth upward, to funnel wealth upward. Many of the progressive institutions, the institutions that were designed to level income, or at least to provide some sort of residual, trickle down, as the economists would say, some trickle down benefits. Those trickle down benefits have become less and less, and that's because of the legislation that's been in place, corporate provisions and regulations that have been in place, and wealth is now being channeled upward, and it's a dynamic. It's even beyond personal preference or someone's greedy inclinations. It's a structural dynamic that's at work. And until that dynamic is altered, we'll continue to have this result. Income will continue to be skewed in a way toward those who have and away from those who have not. Back to the phones. Macy, yo, my brother, how are you, sir?
Hey, Salim, I'm doing great. I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing well, man. Doing well.
Oh, okay. And hello to your WVON listeners, and of course to Albert Woods and Roxanne. Salim, as I listened to you at the onset of your show, talking about Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., and happy birthday to the great Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., I couldn't help but reflect upon, here is a man that in 1948 received his bachelor's degree in sociology from Morehouse College. In 1951, he received his bachelor's of divinity from Crozer Theological Seminary in Chester, Pennsylvania. 1953, he marries one of the most beautiful women on the planet, and Coretta Scott. And then 1954, he was given the opportunity to serve as pastor of Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, the successor of one of the greatest ministers, civil rights workers in the world, Dr. Reverend Vernon Johns, and then in 1955 get his doctorate degree from Boston University. I just think about this. Here's a man that had all of that going and could have just easily said, well, let me just live my life contented, and that would be it. But yet he got it headlong into the movement, the civil rights movement, to help our people. He didn't have a lot of money, as you know, and when he got the money from the Nobel Prize award on October 14th, 1964, he gave it away. But, that speaks volumes to me in terms of the type of person that he was. I mean, there's very few people that would put all of those things on the line just for the cause.
That's right. You're right.
And then, but it's likened to the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey, who was the same way. He lived in a modest one-room apartment, yet the cause was more important. The money that was taken in by the UNIA was there for the race. And to that end, I just wanted to say something in regards to what Mr. Wells was saying to you in regards to Marcus Garvey and Paul Robeson. And he was 100% correct when he said that Marcus Garvey, he did lambast Paul Robeson for his selections of films. You remember that conversation?
Yep.
And Paul Robeson made 11 films altogether, most of them with the British Broadcasting Corporation. And Marcus Garvey did send word to the British Broadcasting Company in objection to the films. And he also, I believe it was in 1937, in his magazine, The Black Man, state that Robeson should be using his genius to appear in pictures and plays. He used his genius to appear in pictures and plays that did a discredit, essentially, to the race. And not that he was disowning Paul Robeson, but he was saying that he could have made better choices, and ultimately he did make better choices. But back to Dr. King, when you were talking about, the foreign policy and stuff like that, with this country's foreign policy, is mostly just like it's today. A lot of money spent on military might, but little money spent on the people that really need it. As you were saying earlier, I believe, profit over people.
I mean, you can easily trace our current military engagements to the desire for corporate profit.
Absolutely.
It's no, I mean, there's no difficulty doing that at all. And King was absolutely correct. It would seem to me that, we would be really talking about just how damaging this continuing obsession with foreign policy as corporate extension is doing. How damaging that is to us as a people. This, something that King pointed out, and how violence. We now we talk about. We're so stuck on violence in our community, and it is a problem. But maybe there is a connection, not just an ethereal connection, but something material and tangible between us bombing these nations and the way our young people act toward each other. I mean, if violence works on the international scene, why this shouldn't it work in the hood?
Right? Absolutely. You make a cogent point. Yes, sir. But let me keep going.
Go ahead, Maceo.
No, and the thing that you were just saying is that, in adding to that, or agreeing with what you just said, we tout all of this, making the world a free world. Is that correct? The free world, a democracy everywhere else. Yet, that same type of effort is not being applied right here.
That's exactly right. Yes, sir.
And one other thing I just want to say also with when in 1963 when Attorney General Robert Kennedy gave the FBI and this which is called this snake, this devil, this J. Edgar Hoover and his cronies to wiretap Dr. King, essentially because they felt that there were communist infiltration in the civil rights movement. But he took it to another level in terms of his warped sense of investigating and trying to disband, black organizations by surveilling Dr. King's personal life. And that also speaks to what this government has been about in terms of our people especially, because they have tried to railroad a lot of our leaders.
And that's why it's very important for us to be conscientious and vigilant today when we find out that the government is overstepping its bounds in terms of surveillance. It should really strike a resonant chord for us in ways that it doesn't for others, perhaps. But apparently, Dr. King's warnings are not being heeded these days.
And I wholeheartedly concur with you. And anyway, Salim, thank you very much, and have a great evening. And but anyway, happy birthday to the great Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr.
Yes, sir.
I mean, those type of leaders, he and the great Marcus Messiah Garvey, I mean, you just don't get any better than that.
No doubt. All right, my brother.
Okay, thank you.
Peace. All right, Brother Maceo, let's go to Shelby. Hey, Shelby, how you doing, my brother?
Hey, what's happening, Brother Salim?
I'm all right, Shelby. Happy Dr. King's anniversary.
Yeah, I'm gonna give certain facts that I think we don't generally hear about Dr. King. But there was a brother that called a little bit earlier, and he was saying that we should have an organization that should use treason. You remember that? Remember that, brother?
Yes.
He said that.
Yes, I do.
Okay. Now, and you mentioned that, well, we don't have that structure to implement it. Now, in 1993, I listened to Minister Farrakhan, and this is documented in a documentary called Brother Malcolm. Did you see that
Yes,
documentary, Brother Malcolm?
Yes, I did.
And Minister Farrakhan had said that, well, if a nation such as the Nation of Islam killed Malcolm and charged him for treason, what the hell business of yours is it anyway?
Yes.
That's nearly a direct quote of what he said. You remember that?
I do.
That's exactly what he said. So I just wanted to point out that. Now, Brother King.
But in that particular case,
okay.
he would say that.
No.
Okay, all right, go ahead. I'm sorry, go ahead, brother.
No, Brother Salim. I'm not giving my opinion.
I got you. Go ahead, man. Go ahead.
I'm stating what he's saying. Now,
yes, sir.
Dr. King wasn't born Martin Luther King. You know that, right? That wasn't his name.
Right.
It's Michael. It was Michael.
Right.
Okay. And also, I'm trying to go in chronological order.
Okay.
Mayfield mentioned that he got his PhD at Boston College.
Yes.
Now, there is Boston College acknowledged that there was some plagiarism involved in Dr. King's PhD thesis.
Great plagiarism.
Okay, I just want to again, no, I'm not putting my opinions in any of this. I'm just stating it exactly
okay,
like
I got
it
you.
is.
I got you. Yes, sir.
Because, Brother Salim, generally we're not going to hear these things. Now, in 1963, in that
incidentally, I just raised the plagiarism issue because in Chicago right now there's an issue of plagiarism with a university official at Chicago State, and a lot of people are saying that isn't it horrible how she plagiarized, blah 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 blah. And I was saying, well, hey, a lot of we're not admitting this, but there are many PhDs who. You can find some textual appropriation and
that's correct.
And whatnot
That's correct.
in their stuff easily, and an absence of any kind of So and I said King himself, in fact, was found to have plagiarized a significant.
Yes, that's correct. That's correct. That's correct. Now that's just the facts of it. I mean, I'm not. People can say now. Brother Salim, I have a copy of a book, certain books that I shouldn't have.
Uh-oh.
And I'm going to get more of them, but I got a copy of The History of Alpha Phi Alpha.
Yes, sir.
And written by Charles H. Wesley. I'm not a member. I'll never be a member, but I got their book, and I know their stuff. And I know that Dr. King is mentioned. It's a reference in there 9 times.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a member of Alpha Phi Alpha. And also, I got a book, 2 volumes of The History of Sigma Pi Phi, the Boule.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not supposed to have it. They say in the book that if you have it and you're not a member, you're supposed to send it back to him. I never sent it back to him. Dr. King was a member of Sigma Pi Phi Boule. Right?
Mm-hmm. That's what I heard. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Well, I got the book now.
Okay.
Salim, there are 5, according to my memory, there are 5 books that Dr. King wrote, and rarely do people mention these 6 books that he wrote. May I mention those because they're not okay. I'm going to go in chronological order. This is from my memory.
Okay.
Stride Towards Freedom
mm-hmm.
in 1958. The Measure of a Man in 1959. Strength to Love in 1963. Why We Can't Wait in 1963. And Where Do We Go from Here, Community or Chaos, and The Triumph. He wrote that in 1968. I mentioned those, Brother Salim, because I would prefer that people go and read Dr. King's own writing, because what I think happened is primarily the white media has turned Dr. King into something that he really wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
And that part really bothers me.
Yes, sir.
But they call him a dreamer, but he was, even though those things that I mentioned about him, I have to admit that this man was brilliant and brave. And there's not enough adjectives, there's not enough credit that I can give him for what he did. Just like Mayfield mentioned, he could have had a wonderful, successful, accomplished life and not take on this task.
That's right.
But he did it willingly. Now, one last thing that I got to mention, Brother Salim. I hope I can say it. I hope I can say it exactly like it's written in the book.
Okay.
And there's a reference to the N-word. So can I use it?
Yes,
Or you just want me to say the N-word?
Real quickly, though, Shelby, I got to take a break.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to say real quick.
Okay.
The day that Dr. King was shot on the balcony, Andrew Young had went to the courts all day, and he came back in. And when he got back in, Dr. King said, "Hey, little nigga, where you been?"
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just saying that they were people just like us. I'm not to say that he used that word and with any disrespect toward Andrew Young.
That's right.
They were people just like us.
Sure. Yes,
so
sir.
That's why.
All right. Thank you, Shelby.
But thanks for taking my call, Brother
All
Salim.
right, man. Thank you for
Have
the
a nice
information,
evening, man.
Appreciate it, brother.
I'll check you Saturday.
Yes,
Okay.
sir. Thank you. And we'll be right back. The movie that they were watching was Lone Survivor. It's movie about Afghanistan, heroic Navy SEALs who get into a squabble in Afghanistan. I've seen the movie. It's a pretty graphic movie. It really illustrates the sacrifice that these cats have to make, and it induces a sense of honor for what these guys are doing. Although, of course, if you look at it in context, they're in somebody's country, they are invading another man's land, and so the people who are the enemies who we demonize looking at the movie, those are people who are simply trying to protect their families from invading forces with enormous resources of killing material. So the question is, does that movie Lone Survivor provoke violence? Remember when all those questions were raised when movies like Boys in the Hood or Do the Right Thing or South Central came out. Everyone was saying, "Hey, those are movies that are going to provoke violence." When they would open, there would be these vigilance committees surrounding theaters to see who gets shot, and then the media would focus on even if a cap gun was produced online waiting for these theaters, it would be trumpeted as some indication of social decay. So with this movie, very right-wing friendly movie, does it provoke violence? Because we've seen what happened in Florida. This guy killed a man in the movie theater. Are people who go to see this movie, are they predisposed towards shooting folk because the movie is so gun focused, so weapons philiatic? Just questions. I don't know how relevant they are, but I thought I'd ask. Hey, Kwame, how are you, my brother?
Good evening, Salim.
Good evening. How you doing?
This is Brother Will, man.
Hey, Brother Will. Hey, man.
Yeah, I'm great. How are you?
I'm well, man. Well.
Good evening to the WVON family. Salim, Martin Luther King, great man, and I would say very sincere in what he was doing. When we look at Martin and what he did and the effects of what he did, I would say that I don't fault Martin for the conditions that we're in, because I don't think he had the foresight to see this results at this particular time, 2014, of what he did. But I think if Martin was living now, Martin would say, "Hey, man, I didn't do that right. We were focusing on the wrong thing the wrong way. We should have been focusing on self-sufficiency rather than independence or codependence." And for as Salim, I'm asking you, I don't know this, but I'm going to ask you this. Is it true? Is it any truth to the rumor that Martin didn't really want to marry Coretta? He wanted to marry a white girl.
I don't know, brother. I really don't know.
Have you ever heard that before?
I have heard that and many, many things about the brother. But, there's so many tales, man, circulating around. I have decided to kind of just disregard them all. Unless I could read them, and find some corroborating evidence.
Yeah, it's something other than J. Edgar Hoover.
Yes.
You understand me?
Mm-hmm.
Something other than what he has to say about the matter. But but once I think about it, that may be some of the reason, and I'm not trying to castigate, because I think Martin was a sincere man. I think he did what he did in an effort to help black people. That was what he thought would be helpful to us at the time. I'm going to give him all of that. But maybe that might explain why he was caught in so many trysts he was caught in trysts with other women, because maybe the sincerest of love wasn't there.
Well, I don't know, man. I tell you one thing that I have found in some of my research is that when you investigate the lives of significant figures in history, especially men, they tend to have had very adventurous sexual lives as well. They tend to have been very promiscuous, if you know, for want of a better word. That's probably the best word, actually. If you do that research yourself, I'm sure that you find similarities in that. And so maybe it's just a part of you know, of being a significant historical figure. I don't know. But I don't really give too much purchase to those kinds of you know, parts of their character, of a person's character.
You know, Salim, I don't eat. Well, I do because I hear it and I wonder about it, and it also speaks to the character of women, because it was no hidden fact that this man was married, and anybody that dealt with him knew that they were dealing with a married man. And I think that women gravitate toward power.
Absolutely, man.
Fame.
It makes sense, don't it? Because they gravitate toward.
No, to me.
It makes sense because you gravitate toward what can ensure your genes a life that will benefit, that will exemplify their promise and their potential. All that humans want to do is proliferate their gene pools, and if you could, and the more advantage you could get for that gene pool, and that's what women seek. That's the biological urge. I mean, there are other kind of social motives that come into play, but their biological urge is to secure a very beneficial environment for their genes to mature and manifest their promise and potential.
So polygamy ain't such a far-fetched thing in your opinion.
Not at all. No, for a lot of good reasons, man. First of all, you know, a lot of people were talking about, you know, polyandry. I heard some discussions on that. All you have to do is look at the biological equipment that men come with, and, you know, the billions of sperm cells. I mean, in some ways, you can say that the purpose of men is to proliferate sperm and try to find as many gene pools as they can create. And the purpose of women is to secure their own gene pool, to ensure that their gene pool is sufficiently secured and sufficiently equipped to manifest the potential of whatever those genes are. I mean, that's just biologically. So,
okay. Well, okay, Salim, I'm not disagreeing with you. So all you WVON women out there listening, you heard what Salim said. It's all right for us to have 3 or 4 women.
We got into this once before, yeah. But still, you know, there's social constraints, but there's no way that you can deny that biological reality, really.
Of course it is. I mean, we can pollinate a lot of wounds.
That's right.
Brother.
That's right.
And you understand? And I can see that. But I'll say this about it: when you get right down to the moral issue of the thing, it is best that you don't. I know in some societies that it is condoned.
Yeah, it is best that you don't. That's true. You're right. I mean, because it opens you up to too many potentials for corruption and whatnot.
That is so correct. That is so correct. And I'm not trying to castigate Martin in any kind of way. I just wondered if you had heard anything about that.
The white girl thing. I had heard about that. Yes, sir.
All right, then, Brother Salim. Peace and power to the WVON family.
Thank you, brother. All right. Peace and power to the WVON family indeed. Kwame, you are next. Yes, sir.
Habarigani, Brother Salim.
Habarigani, my brother. How are you, sir?
And happy Dr. King's Day to you and your listening audience.
Thank you.
There's some very interesting topics that you're touching upon tonight. Polygamy, character assassination.
Ooh, yes, sir.
But whatever a person does in their personal life, or they're promiscuous or whatever, that's a judgmental call. And it doesn't diminish the greatness that they have accomplished in life.
I agree.
I'm gonna say this here. I recall vividly when Dr. King was assassinated. I was a young man, 18 years old, in Vietnam. And we went through our base camp, and everybody that didn't look like
us. So you were in Vietnam in 68, huh?
Exactly. I was at Tan Son Nhut. I was a combat military.
So you must have been in the Air Force then.
Well, no, I was a combat military policeman.
Okay, all right.
And I was
because Townsend was an air base.
Right, it was an air base. That was part of our duty to protect the air base.
Okay, all right.
And because I pulled duty in Saigon and things of that nature.
Yes,
but during the time when and one of your callers alluded to it earlier, he talked about the speech that Dr. King made at the Riverside Church, which needs to be heard over and over again.
That's right.
But unfortunately, we understand the protests of the 60s, and I was quite mature at that age because I didn't think I had any business being at Vietnam because I said, just like Ali said, no Vietnamese has ever used the N-word on me.
Yes, sir.
And I was quite political astute at that time. It was a lesson to be learned. A lot of the brothers, I recall I was over there doing the Tet Offensive, and certainly a lot of people was killed, but I was fortunate to get out. But Dr. King...
You were fortunate, man. That was...
very much so. Yeah. But Dr. King certainly is my hero and one of our many heroes that have contributed so much. And you can just look at the vicissitudes of life, and sometimes the more things change, the more they remain the same because the dreams still have not been realized yet.
That's correct. That's correct. And in fact, some of the very things that Dr. King focused on in the last part of his life, this whole issue of militarism and the fact that corporations, the quest for profit was directing our foreign policy, that is even much more flagrant than it was then.
Absolutely, Brother Salim. At the military-industrial complex, the corporate structure, it is more aggressive now than ever were before because every 10 or 15 years there is some conflict. What did you gain from being in Iraq? What are you gaining from being in Afghanistan? And you are this so-called beacon of light for democracy, but yet at home there's a lot to be desired.
No doubt.
And I want to close with this here. This is the first time I've called your program.
Oh, welcome, brother. Welcome,
but I appreciate your intellectual depth.
Thank you, man. Appreciate that.
Kwaheri.
All right, man. Peace. Brother Kwame, hey, always good to get those kinds of comments. Brother, hold on, Brother Mike. I'll get you when we come back from this break. And we are back. Let's go right to Mike. Hey, Mike. Mike, I'm good, man. How are you?
Good. Listen, the only thing that's good about being submerged in total darkness is that it only takes a glimmer of light to see everything. So the powers that be, of course, must work very hard to see to it that you never even get a glimmer of light. But that's not what I called about. There's been some talk here lately since the Al Sharpton meeting about redlining around real estate, et cetera.
Yes, sir.
And, it occurred to me that, and of course this term redlining is an old term. I think it was even coined in 1960 or so, if I'm not mistaken. And it occurred to me that if there's a line, that it has to start somewhere. And I wanted to know, where did the red line start? And while when we say redlining, we're basically talking about white lending institutions refusing to lend to black people for economic development, et cetera.
That's right.
But the red line doesn't start with them. The red line actually starts in the black community. Because we expect, or some of us expect, that black banks would be out here providing us with all of the resources that we need to do the economic development in our community. But when you look at the people in our community, everybody's walking around with a Chase card. So if you black people, if we have, and I have my money in Illinois Service Federal, but if we have all of our money in Chase and similar institutions, why would we expect a black bank to have anything to lend? I don't even know where that logic starts. It must be rooted somewhere in foolishness.
I think.
Did you?
I think the people who would expect black banks to lend also patronize black banks for the most part.
Well, yeah, I would agree with that, but we have many black people who expect them to lend, and they don't even know where a black bank is located at.
Yeah, I think that's true too. Mm-hmm.
Because I've heard people on this station talk about, well, I think I'm gonna open me an account in a black bank.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so but they every day they talk about, you know, these banks redlining black folks. Did you know that one of the criteria for receiving a loan is that you be of sound mind?
Yes, sir.
So now if you're willing to take all of your resources and give them to someone else so that they can provide and develop for themselves in their community, and then beg for resources for your community, that doesn't present the figure of someone with a sound mind.
Well, or either that or they are not well educated. There are a lot of people who don't even realize that what a bank's real purpose is. I mean, as far as they're concerned, a bank is simply where they put their money and where they get their checking accounts, and that's the way they see it. They don't know that the where banks fit in the overall economic configuration that we find ourselves in, you know. So I think is a problem of miseducation as well.
Perhaps, but I think that's got to be I shouldn't say a very small number of people, Salim, because after witnessing the documentary that we spoke about the other day, Contradiction,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not really surprised at what black people don't know and what black people can rationalize, because we can certainly rationalize a lot of foolishness. Did I tell you about the scene in the documentary where they were talking to a sister who was smoking crack?
No, I don't think you talked about that. Well, what happened?
Well, they asked her if they could remove her addiction from crack cocaine, would she give up Jesus? And she said no, that Jesus was number one in her life. But we all know what's number one in her life, and it ain't Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
In another scene, a guy who was purported to, who says that he's a reverend, he says that everything in the Bible is true and some of it happened. Well, if it's all true, then all of it happened. But he says some of it happened.
Mm-hmm.
The documentary is just littered with the ignorance of our people. And I'll just end by saying that Africa is being ravished by Catholicism, and the ignorance there makes ours look like a walk in the park. Sling, we're in big trouble, man. Something is seriously wrong, and Elijah Muhammad identified it, but I think we just have a problem.
Which one? How do you identify it? Which one did he say? I mean,
Elijah Muhammad said that black people were foolish people. And I would just like to say to him, if he's still listening, he says we were foolish people. No, we are foolish people.
Thank you, my brother. Appreciate it, Michael. All right. There's the dose of ire. We'll be back. 806. Salim MuWakkil here on the Talk of Chicago, January 15th, the day of Martin Luther King's birth. Let's see. There was something I wanted to speak on here. I can't remember what it was. Oh, yeah. The House passed this compromise budget. It looks like we won't have the problem of a governmental shutdown and all of that. The Senate has concluded that the Benghazi attack was preventable, but they don't endorse these ISA allegations. The House has been trying to saddle the White House with some culpability for that. They don't do that with this report, this Senate report. Although there was a separate conclusion published by the Senate Republicans, which they did place a little bit more blame on the Obama administration for something they should have done. But still, even that was a kind of a concession to Issa and his overzealous attempts to make some sort of connection. But essentially, they say that this government didn't take the right kind of precautions, and I don't have any problems with that really, because the whole Libya thing was a bad move on our part. Benghazi was never friendly to the U.S., although we claimed it was because it didn't like Gaddafi. The reason it didn't like Gaddafi is because Benghazi was a haven for jihadist forces. They didn't like Gaddafi, but they didn't like us either, or they didn't like this country either. And Gaddafi actually was more aligned with the views of of the U.S., or the pluralistic notions of a democratic society than those in Benghazi. And so for us to plant ourselves in Benghazi was an inappropriate thing to do in the first place. The only reason we were there was because it was a CIA location, almost a dirty site, but it was a surveillance haven for the CIA. They thought it was appropriate for them, but for anything larger, it would draw too much attention, which is exactly what it did. And so I think that the Senate saw a lot of the contradictions and the fact that we had this embassy, or whatever you want to call it, this little part of U.S. Operations in Benghazi. That was wrong. It wasn't sufficiently protected because no one really wanted to admit that it was there. It was on a clandestine mission. It didn't want to draw attention to itself. And the Senate kind of exposed all of those contradictions. And that's good to know, really. It's not a negative thing against this president, as many people will construe it to be. It is a negative appraisal of the policy in Libya, and that's also good to know. Randy, good evening. You're on the Talk of Chicago. How you doing? Brother Randy, what's up, my brother? Randy, are you there? I think Randy's there, but he's just not on the phone. Well, okay. We'll put Randy on hold and go to Kay. Hey, Kay, good evening.
Hello, how are you?
I'm well.
It's good to hear.
Thank you.
Two quick things.
Yes, ma'am.
You had mentioned the Benghazi thing.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't you equate it to, remember that movie Frankenstein?
Yeah, I do remember that movie.
Mm-hmm. Artificially created, and eventually Frankenstein just turned on everyone.
Yes.
And I think of Benghazi that way. This was a created coup, and the people that they used to overthrow Gaddafi end up turning on the U.S.
Yes. Well, I think that's true. I think that you must have been reading some of my old works, because I actually term our policy as Frankensteinian. Because that's exactly what happened in Afghanistan. We take the remnants of these old fighting, units. We take and we refashion them, and we create this opposition to people we don't like, and then eventually this opposition, this refashioned opposition, turns on us and becomes our enemy. And that's exactly what happened. That's what Al Qaeda is a result of. That's what the Taliban is a result of. And in fact, that's what the Egyptian rulership is a result of too, in a strange way. So yeah, that's exactly what happens. Frankensteinian policy creates Frankensteins.
Oh, okay. Do you have a blog or something? You said your writings. Do you write a blog every day?
Oh well, no. I have an archive of maybe 2,000 stories or so that I occasionally post on Facebook and other places, and I still, I write occasionally here and there.
Oh, okay. Well, that would be nice if you had a blog, and I would check it out. Well, when you get one, make sure you let your
I
audience.
do have a blog, but I don't contribute to it that frequently. But the blog does contain a lot of my old stories, so perhaps you can go to it. It's Bop City Chronicles is my blog's name.
It's called the what?
Bop City Chronicles.
Bop City.
Bop City. BOP City Chronicles.
Oh, Bop City. Okay, I'll check it out. I didn't say Salim.
No. Well, Salim's on there, but Bop City Chronicles is the name of the blog.
Oh, okay. That's just your personal blog that's called Bop. Okay,
Yes.
I see how that works. All right. Okay. And then the other thing is about when. Okay. You said that they approved approved it so that the government won't go into like a strike. But the thing is, they will always have to approve. I mean, don't you think it's more like a horse and pony, dog and pony show? Because it always happens. They say, "Oh no, if we don't get it approved, then we're going to close down." And then they'll close down for like a week or two, and then their constituencies are going to get mad, and then you go on all the TV shows, and then eventually they come to some kind of compromise, and then they eventually pass it anyway.
No, what are you talking about now? What legislation are you talking about now?
Okay, like they said, if you don't raise the debt ceiling,
okay,
if you don't do that, because they eventually have to do it anyway. Because I don't think this country's ever going to pay off I think it's like in the trillions. I don't think they're going to ever pay off that money.
Well, we came close to doing it once before. It's not insurmountable. Things happen. When the economy changes, it's really quite amazing how quickly you can accumulate capital reserves that can take care of these debts. Thank you, my sister. Appreciate it.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, let's go to James. Hey, James. How are you, bro?
Brother, I'm slow, but I'm sure.
All right, man.
This your lucky night here, brother.
Yes, sir.
I'm not going to hold you long.
Oh, man. Sometimes, I appreciate you holding me long.
Yeah, but I want to let the other people get in.
Okay.
That movie, The Lone Survivor, that's just more propaganda.
Yes.
They good at propaganda, man. They are
indeed
excellent.
The best.
Yeah. U.S. is their name. Propaganda, their game.
You got it.
Maceo said they make the effort to spread democracy abroad, but that same effort is not put forth here. But I'm sure Maceo realized that they're not spreading democracy abroad. They're spreading white supremacy and imperialism abroad. Democracy is a con game. It's a carrot stick.
And that's and in fact that's again, man, that was one of the amazing pieces of clarity that Dr. King brought to observation of foreign policy. He was very clear that it's corporate profit that is leading the way in our foreign policy incentives.
Yeah, but it's not even profit. It's white supremacy and imperialism. The profit is what poor people concentrate on. Like poor people here say money. Oh, they want our money. Oh, they want to get all the money. We need money. It ain't about that. It's about white supremacy and eliminating certain people. Money is a tool they use to manipulate us.
Well, that's your particular vision of it, my brother.
Yeah, that's mine there.
Yeah.
Brother Siddiqui said last week, I shouldn't talk about genocide because that might stop people from doing something that they might want to do as far as in the struggle, I guess.
No, he's saying that is a sense of exhaustion and resolution in the notion of genocide. That is a fait accompli. So
it's what?
It's a fait accompli. So it demobilizes people from doing something positive for themselves. If that's the ultimate goal, if a fait accompli means it's something that's happened already. There's nothing you can do to change it. And if you're faced with that, it counsels a lack of mobility. It counsels a lack of activity. Since you can't do anything anyway, why do anything? And
Well,
I think that's what Sadiqi was talking about.
Oh, well, I would totally disagree with that. First of all, Brother Siddiqui and all other people, I hear one person calling up charging genocide. That's me. If we got a talk show and other talk
Oh, no,
shows...
I've had a brother on. I've had a brother who has a whole book. The book is
I got that book.
A Genocide by Any
that.
Other Name or something like that.
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. I got the book. I went to see him. I understand that.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, overall, on the regular talk show circuit, very few people charge genocide. So, Brother Siddiqui, if I charge genocide with my little time I get on the air, I don't see nothing wrong with that. With a power structure whose history is full of genocide. So me charging them with it, with my little time, can I do that? Can I have that? And let the people decide whether that's real, good, or bad. Let them decide that. One last thing.
Yes, sir.
One last thing. Brother Sherry said, I didn't know this. He said Dr. King name wasn't Martin before it was Michael.
Right.
Do you know why they changed it to Martin?
Well, his father wanted it to change.
Okay. Are you familiar with the religious person Martin Luther from the 1500s?
Yes, the one who he put the Declaration on the door. He really is the beginning of Protestantism.
Right. Well, he used to be in Catholic,
yes.
And he saw how phony they was and trying to excommunicate him. He said they were so darn phony, he left them, started his own thing. Mm-hmm. But one thing he said that I want people to know, Martin Luther said, no one need think that the world can be ruled without blood. The silver sword shall and must be red and bloody. That was Martin Luther.
Dig that. All right.
All right. Thank you, brother.
All right. Thank you. Brother James, what's wrong with a little genocide talk and with the rest of the talk? We need that as one consideration. And, you know, there was a whole movement. We charged genocide in the black movement at one point, took it to the UN talking about that issue, that this country was intent on eliminating African-American people. So, you know, James is not totally paranoid, but I think Sadiqi's question, and many others, mine, essentially, what I used to always ask James is, you know, okay, now that we know genocide is inevitable, where does that leave us? Should we simply just bend over and kiss our ass goodbye, or what should we do? Man Song, Hotep, my brother.
Hey, Hotep. How you doing, my brother?
I'm doing well.
Hey, man, I really wanted to get in on that conversation you had Saturday. That was a slamming show with Brother Conrad.
Oh, yes, sir. Yes,
but,
sir.
I discovered my phone went dead, and I had to get a new phone. So,
oh, man,
you know.
Too bad. Brother, your voice would have been very welcome on that show.
Yeah, Amiri Baraka, he was an awesome guy, you know.
Yes, he was.
And I remember being in the area, you know, for the Million Man March Day of Absence. Drove up from Florida with a group.
Mm-hmm.
And the day before, they had that Holocaust conference at the high school.
Mm-hmm.
Khalid Muhammad and
yes,
you know,
Shabazz, Malik Zulu Shabazz.
Yeah, and I remember we were at the hotel watching it on TV, you know, and we were headed into the city. And Baraka did this poem that was just awesome, man. And I can't remember the name or anything of it, but you know how he would play with his, you know, he would do things like,
right,
that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I mean, oh man, and when I saw him, the last time I saw him up here at Chicago State, you know, I asked him about that, and he couldn't remember it. You know, so hey, I guess as you get older, man, you know, you have all that work out there.
But man, he was doing stuff all over the place, man.
Right. But this one, man, you know. But anyway, I just wanted to let your audience know about two programs honoring, you know, Dr. King. It's one that's going to be by the group called RISE, R-I-S-E. And the theme is Hope in an Age of Crisis, Reclaiming Dr. King's Radical Vision for Economic Equality. And so that's going to be this Sunday, the 19th, at 2:30 p.m. to 4:30 p.m., a couple of hours, at the St. Michael, the Archangel Catholic Church, 8235 South Shore Drive. And, I'm pretty sure it's just a free occasion. And then, of course, I told y'all about Milwaukee, Monday, this coming Monday. Janetta Herrera has the King Fest each year. And this Monday, Dr. Leonard Jeffries, the great author, historian, and professor, among other titles, is going to be the keynote speaker. I guess he's coming in from New York. And that's going to be at the Wisconsin African American Women's Center. And it begins at 12 to 6 p.m. They have, video and, spoken word and all that kind of thing, vendors and everything. And it's free. And you can call Sister Jeanette. Her number is 414-828-1410. 414 area code 828-1410. Sister Jeanette or Janetta. And hopefully people will be able to go to either one or both.
The one at the St. Michael's is Monday as well, or is it Sunday?
No, this is Sunday the 19th.
Okay.
Yeah, and that would be great for people to check out too, because they're talking about his radical vision for economic equality.
That's what we should be talking about.
Right, and in regards to what I know about King's economic vision, the radical piece, and the whole thing with the war and all that, we got to give Malik Shabazz credit because he was advocating these things before Dr. King. Dr. King picked up on some of that, I believe, and later on become the advocate even more. But Malcolm was right on that. He talked about U.S. dollarism in Southeast Asia. He was talking about capitalism, calling it by name.
Yeah.
So this brother, we must remember.
Well, I mean, right? Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Came to a lot of those positions earlier.
Yes, sir.
Okay, man.
All right, man. So thank you, brother. Appreciate it. All right, let's go to Brother Leonard. Hey, my brother, how are you, sir?
Fine.
Assalamu alaikum.
How about yourself?
All right.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
Did you get a chance to go over the?
I did. I got your stuff, man. It's interesting, brother. Very interesting.
Does it arise any questions in your mind?
Well, yeah, a lot of questions, but I have to have, we can do that at another time.
Okay. Well, then, in fact, if it's going to be another time, I guess tonight, the only thing I could probably do is, I guess I got to end up on the other side of the fence because of the fact that I feel what we've done as a people since the inception of this country has been denied from a historical standpoint. It gives us a skewed understanding as our generations move forward.
Mm-hmm.
And although it may sound negative, it's just true that Amira Baraka did to the Black Power movement what Malcolm did to the Nation of Islam. When he made that hard left,
mm-hmm.
he caused a division down the middle that has, to this day, as in the nation, caused a division where the two different sides lie. Those that want to back true capitalism, which is not what Caucasians in Europe or America practice. They practice an Occidental style. And communism, another Occidental understanding. Neither one of those understandings were made for us as a historical understanding. There was something prior to that. And all a person has to do is take the term Occidental, look it up in the dictionary, and they'll understand. It's in opposition to Oriental, meaning it's in opposition to true. So knowing that, the whole construct, as it's done, from the time you wake up in the morning, you are bombarded by thoughts and concepts that are twisted, cause dis-ease, which is a mispronounced word, disease, and there's just a multitude of realities that foster off that from the standpoint of industry and commerce, we're missing the boat. And that package I gave you kind of gives an opportunity for us to get some leverage on that.
Yeah. Well, I think you make a very good point, brother, with comparing Baraka to Malcolm in a certain way, and it's interesting because Baraka, when Manny Marable wrote this book on the reinvention, Malcolm X, the reinvention, Baraka was one of the critics, and one of his criticisms was that, well, it wasn't exactly that Marable gave too much credit to Malcolm's changing perspectives, because I say it was ironic because that's exactly what people accused Baraka of when he turned left on black nationalism. They accused him of doing the same thing. So yeah, there's a very, very strong similarity there.
There's a stark difference. Malcolm's was intent and malicious. Baraka's was not. His was ideological, and he did it because of his rebellion to this structure that we live under.
Yes, but you know what, man, Brother Leonard, I think you have to acknowledge that there are many people who say that Malcolm's split was also driven by ideology and religious conviction. You don't agree with that, and I don't really either. I mean, I know that there's many more considerations involved in why he changed.
Right.
But many people do. Like, for example, Brother Mansong, who just got off the phone, would say that Malcolm changed because he came to a different understanding.
And I listen to Mansong and all the other beautiful brothers that call in and make their contributions. Mm-hmm. But unlike you or myself, we're a little further along in age, I think, than most of them. And since we were actively involved, myself personally, I was able to get information from the standpoint of those that ran the nation then and their understanding in relationship to what actually went down. And
incidentally, Brother Leonard, Dr. Abdul Salam, remember the dentist?
Yes.
He's written a book. Have you seen that?
No, sir, I have not.
The title of it is "The White Man Still the Devil?"
Okay.
I'm trying. I think I'm gonna get the brother on Saturday, so make sure you check it.
And keep this in the back of your mind
I'm gonna address your thing.
I just got to say this in closing. Most brothers are reluctant to discuss. I stayed in Detroit, Michigan, for 20 years during my political exile after Harold Washington, and I asked brothers the title to the messenger's last lecture in '74, and invariably they would give me the title to his lecture he made in '73. The title was never spoken until I got back home to Illinois, and it was "As the Sun Rises in the West." And there's a lot of reasons. I made reference to one of them from the standpoint of him apologizing in that lecture to having taught hate. A lot of brothers disagree with me about that, especially those that followed Muhammad, because a lot of them that came in after the nation had taken a fall really didn't get a true understanding of why the nation fell, and during its first term, what it really represented. If they didn't hear that last lecture, Master Elijah Muhammad, I hung on every word because of what he said, from the standpoint of the condition of our people at this present day and time. What he predicted would happen has occurred. And he gave us FOI orders. And here again, when people see me, they see me smoking a cigarette, or they might see me doing other things that all of the people do. They think I'm breaking a law. Mm-hmm. But in actuality, Master Elijah Muhammad in his last lecture told us we had become too self-righteous. Our own people feared us. And he gave orders to his FOI to get back in the mud and get your people. So I'm the last FOI in the mud.
All right, brother. Thank you, Brother Leonard. Appreciate it, my brother. And we will be right back. 8:37, Salim MuWakkil here on the Talk of Chicago. January 15th. And we're going to go right back to the phones. Brother James, hey, man, how are you? James in Virginia. Yes, sir.
Hey, Salim. How you doing tonight, man?
I'm good.
Good talking to you.
Yes, sir.
Hey, I have a comment concerning one of your previous callers.
Okay.
You mentioned something about Dr. King, had some type of interest in, I guess, white women or something like that.
Yeah,
and
I will.
Or he wanted to marry a white woman, and
Mm-hmm.
and then and I'm like, I put two and two together, right? And you mentioned with one of your other callers his studiousness while he was in school, right?
Yes.
I came to the conclusion that Dr. King knew he knew his direction. He knew what he was going to do in life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you know this, Salim, but I don't think some of your listeners might not know this. But back in the old days, back in ancient time, it was a show of graciousness to one's. I don't like to use the word enemy, but for lack of term, I'll have to at this point. To present oneself with a wife of that race that he was going to present his whatever. You know that, right? It was just something that they did to show it was a sign of peace, and so I think personally that King had this in mind. I'm sure Dr. King came across this knowledge, that this type of gesture that they used, back in the ancient days. One country to another. It was a sign of peace, and I don't think it was.
You mean to marry to matrimony with your enemy was a kind of sign of reconciliation. It was a gesture of reconciliation.
Yeah, I know what you mean, but there was no need for reconciliation.
No, I'm asking you, is that what you mean?
Well, yeah, I think that's what Dr. King was thinking. I don't think it was just for the sake of marrying a white woman. You know what I mean?
I'm not even sure that he considered that. I mean,
okay. Well, that's
I'd heard that, but I haven't seen any corroboration of it.
One more thing, Mr. Swain, Mr. Walker.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned a book that someone wrote about African American men suffering, the damage of racism.
Yes.
You mentioned that earlier in your show.
Mm-hmm.
And years ago, I did my own little research on that, and and listening to other knowledgeable men and women talk on the subject, and I came to my own conclusion that the weakest form of racism is nothing more than a ghost. It has no hands, it has no feet. All it has is ugly expression that we see in our society. That's the weakest form of racism. It's just a boogeyman. When it begins to reach into our politics, now it has hands and it has feet, right? It's in the politics. Now it's like institutionalized. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And that can be that is not. That still can't really cause any harm to black men. But what can cause harm to black man concerning racism, and I know you understand this, Salim, is and this is and in order for this to work on the black man has to allow this into his personal life. If he didn't allow these things into his personal life, they wouldn't affect him so much. And I'm not talking about jobs, and I'm talking about what is stressing, in my opinion, African Americans are materialism. These things that that many of us are finding more and more difficult to obtain. It's these stress factors that is it wings out from politics but it may have it might stem from politics, some kind of shadow or something like that. But it's these things that are stressing the black man, that the trends, the fads. I mentioned that on other radio show programs. It is these things that I believe is stressing the black man out, causing him to run, to chase other things, leave his family, chasing women. The very lifestyle.
What thing? What do you mean? Material things? You're saying?
So what things?
Are you saying material things are what's stressing people?
Well, it's not. It's more than just material, but material is definitely up on one of the top 7. And if our men can learn to put these things under some kind of control, if he would just be aware of fads and trends, and begin to realize that it's these very things, fads and trends are nothing more than they cloak the temptations of Satan, as far as I'm concerned. All right?
Okay, brother.
There's Satan's temptations cloaked in, our men don't see the possible damage that can come from these things down the road.
All right, my
you
brother.
don't see that.
I hear you. Thank you,
All
James.
right,
Appreciate it, brother. All right. Let's go to Greg. Hey, Greg, how you doing, my brother? Greg.
Is that Greg or Ray?
Is this Ray?
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, Ray.
Yes, it's Ray. How you doing? It's the first time I called since the New Year. Happy New Year.
Oh, brother.
To
Welcome,
the
welcome.
family.
Uh-huh.
Last year was outstanding. I'm looking forward to another good year.
All right, brother. Yes, sir.
And I was listening to the Our Shopping Show. We have to give each other credit when we do outstanding things. I like to thank Brother James. I like how he called Our Shopping. I think he did quite well.
Who's that now?
Al tried to Brother James, when he was talking to Al last week, he did outstanding. He called him twice.
Oh, you mean the Brother James who calls here?
Yeah, he did a good job. I'll try to rush him off the phone, but he did a good job, man. We got to give each other a pat when we do things right. So he did an outstanding job.
All right.
And, I think that the minister is trying to get a 36 cent for something to build for some farm area.
Yes.
I like to see everybody should try to look into that because he definitely got my 36 cents a week.
Okay.
I'm going to try to give a whole 20 for the year, so that's something that's good. I didn't want to say
just
much
$20 bill for the year will take care of it, right?
Right. Yeah, so we can build and have stuff for ourselves. I didn't want to say much. I didn't want to keep it long, but other than that, just have a good year, brother.
All right, Ray. Thank you, man. Appreciate it, brother.
All
right.
All right.
Take care. So Brother James was on Al Sharpton's show, I think the brother was saying. Hey, that should be interesting. I'm sure that was an interesting conversation. Let's see. We got Jay. Hey, Jay. How you doing?
All right. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
Yes, sir. Hey, I called you last week about the Hercules.
Oh, yes, sir.
topic.
Yes, sir. Uh-huh.
Yes, sir. I didn't get a chance to check it out, but I just recently just went back. I'm in college now, seeking my degree in education, but
all right.
Way
to go, brother.
I noticed, man, I'm sorry?
I say way to go, brother.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Years late, but, I'm going to be timely.
Never too late,
so I got it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir. the thing I wanted to say is, bro, I went to an elementary school out in Forest Park, and they had in the hallway the lockers. The lockers that's like from the floor to the ceiling, like 6 foot. The lockers that be in the wall.
Uh-huh.
So in this elementary school, Forest Park is predominantly white, but it's got blacks and somewhat little blacks. But anyway, they had all of these Greek mythology heroes like Zeus, Athena, Apollo, and all the, a couple of more other gods, and they had their characteristics, their power, their things like that, their signs.
Yes.
But all these gods were blue-eyed, blonde-haired gods.
Ain't that something?
And that's appropriate because those are Greek mythology.
Yes.
And the thing I have a problem with in our black schools, why don't we, like I was saying last week, all of these movies that have came out, like Hercules now, but you had 300 about the Macedonian warriors, then you had Alexander the Great, and then you had Gladiator. But none of the schools in the black community have any images of like the brothers from Egypt, the warrior pharaohs from the 18th and 19th dynasty, like Tutmosis III.
Yeah.
Now he's called the ancient Napoleon. You know, this is how they equivocate him to Napoleon. But this brother never lost a battle.
Yes, sir.
He went from Egypt to the Middle East, Syria, and even crossed the Euphrates, you know, for like 19 years straight, you know, on campaigns.
Yeah.
But we never hear nothing about this
Or
brother.
Tahaka.
You know.
We don't hear about Tahaka either.
Tahaka who fought against Assyria, right? We never hear about him.
You know, that's because we don't know that. That's the primary reason, brother. We're not familiar with these figures in history.
You're right. We're not familiar with our ancient. We have ancient warrior kings, even though
That's
it's thousands of years. But their kings, their legends and heroes are thousands of years old too. But you're right. We don't know that. Like
That's
a brother I know.
Because all of the people all of the pantheon, the Grecian pantheon, basically are completely lifted from Egyptian.
Right, Apollo.
Exactly.
Right, Apollo is the equivalent of Osiris or I can't get another. His equivalent is Amun. Apollo is the equivalent of Amun, I believe. You know, but you're right. All of these, you know, the Greeks came to Egypt. They studied under, you know, the Egyptians. You know, even though they didn't call themselves Egyptians, like it's like what you're saying. Our people don't even know. They're like a brother. I know he's big on this Menom character. You know.
Menom, like, that's brother Jay. Brother Jay. Is that who you're talking about? Brother Jay wrote a book on Menon.
Oh no! I'm saying it's a guy that I know. You know, he's a brother personally. I know he always telling me about Menon. I'm like, Menon was the pharaoh Amenhotep III, and the way that they got that name Menon is when the foreigners came. They called these two statues that this king built on the west bank of the Nile, the west bank of the Nile, his mortuary temple. You know, he left these. The only thing that's left in that is these two 70-foot colossal seated statues. You know, but they called them the Colossals of Menon. But the king wasn't. He was not Menon. His name was Amenhotep III. That was Akhenaten's father.
That's right.
And this man, what my point is, all these kings was black.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? And they got the mummies in the Cairo Museum, but they won't do the DNA analysis. And when Sheikh Anta Diop did do he didn't do a
carbon dating analysis.
Carbon dating, right. To prove that these kings were black, but they won't do that because that'll bust up their whole mythology and lie about Egypt was a white civilization.
Well, you know what though, Brother Jay, I don't think there are many credible Egyptologists who are making those claims today. I think that's been pretty seriously debunked.
Yes, sir, it can be seriously debunked, but that would destroy the white supremacy myth.
Well, yeah, that's right. All right, man. Thank you, brother. Appreciate it, Jay. Good information, man.
Yes, sir.
All right, let's go to Dr. Porter. Yes, sir. Good evening. How are you?
Good evening, man. How are you?
I'm good, brother. Good.
Habari in honor of Dr. King.
Yes, indeed. Yes, sir.
I have 3 brief comments.
All right.
I'm talking about 2 years to you. First of all, I heard somewhere last week, I know I heard it, PBS or maybe VON, that either in Newark, New Jersey or New Jersey, that under Cory Booker or someone, that they experimented with reducing crime and violence in the black community by making sure that young black men received training, rehab, and when they were through that, got good on-the-job training and then good jobs that paid decent. And that the crime rate and the violence and murder went down astronomically, man. I know
that's not true, brother. They're having big problems, and they're having big problems in Newark right now with violence, man. The murder rate is higher than it's been since the 90s. Newark and Trenton are 2 very deeply plagued cities in Jersey.
Okay, well, maybe it wasn't New Jersey, but some city where the violence and crime went down because they gave these young black men training and OJT and
that would do it. That would do it.
What was it? That would do
No,
it.
I'm saying that would
Crime went down.
that kind of investment would certainly do it.
Right. The other thing I need to say, Salam, is that I believe the Chicago Urban League particularly is helping a lot of brothers and sisters get the training they need from resume writing to the trades. My second son, who is 50, went through a training there. He is now a truck driver making $25 an hour out at the airport, anyway, shoveling the snow with a big machine. And he took time, 4 or 5 months, and went through that training. Although he had a BA degree, but he wasn't making enough money. So I know that Chicago Urban League is one institution that has some solution-based.
What's the name of it again? I'm sorry. What is the name again?
The Chicago Urban League.
Oh, Urban League. Okay, yes, sir.
Chicago
All right,
Urban League,
yeah, you're right. The Urban League has been really trying to provide some employment in a very aggressive way, man, which is very commendable.
Yeah, you can go by there, and they got a floor where they help you resume and all kind of things, man, counseling. And I think it's an excellent job. But more people need to know about it. Okay.
Absolutely right.
The third thing is, a few years ago, I told you I was working on a couple of books. I've written 4 or 5 books since then. Okay.
I've seen
I'm
one
going
or
to send
two
you a
of
copy of
them.
my latest book, which is a critique of the struggle and leadership between Dr. Jeremiah Wright and President Obama in 2008.
Interesting, brother.
I'm going to send you a copy.
Give me a quick synopsis.
The theme tells you Dr. Jeremiah Wright Jr. and President Barack Obama. Why the brilliant student are separated from his masterful teacher to become President of the United States of America.
Dig that, brother.
Yes,
All
sir.
right, I can't wait to read that one.
Yeah, I'm going to send it to you probably next week, man.
All right, Dr. Porter. Thank you, brother. All right, take care.
God bless. Bye.
Haparagani. All right, let's go to Mantine. Mantine, assalamu alaikum.
Yes, walaikum salam, sir. Good evening.
Good evening.
I was calling because I was wanting to follow up on caller. I think Leonard. He was trying to quote 1974.
Yes.
Savior's Day.
The thug. Oh, right. I want to speak on that a little bit more. Yeah. When you said he's a thug in the mud, he's in the mud. FOI in the mud.
Yeah, Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I've seen that. I've been a member of Crow since I was 17 years old. I'm 40 years old now, and I've been watching that tape for years. I've never heard that. So if I know he said he's soft. He heard some things that other people miss. I would like for him to enlighten me on that one because I never heard the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that. And I've looked at that 1974 Savior's Day too many times to even count. And what he said was the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said we would never. How did you say? We were too righteous. Honorable Elijah Muhammad never said anything like that. What he stated is that we as far as the sisters, they can have a long white dress on for the brothers. They can't have on the uniform, clean on the outside, get dirty on the inside. That's what he said. And that goes with anything. I mean, you can't be Muslim outwardly, and then on the inside, you being other than self. So that's inaccurate. And
when Brother Leonard comes on again, I want him to be a little bit more specific on that quote. He was saying it was from the
1974 Savior's Day.
No, I think he said it was a year before that, 73.
Even 1973. I'm familiar with 1973.
Yeah.
The title of that was "A Savior is Born."
What was the title of the 74 speech again?
The title is many differ on the title. The title is "The Sun Rises from the West," but also many say that it's entitled "The Last Sermon."
Yeah, right.
A lot of people say that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad went back and said, stop calling the white man the devil and this type of thing. He never said that. He always, he said he taught on the nature of white people, but he didn't just, teach us that to go out there just to call them that, just to be calling them that.
Right.
And he said that that the people show respect to everyone. As long as they show respect to you, that don't mean that we go out there and just be disrespectful. And he gave an example in 1959 where he had a police escort in Washington, D.C. when he spoke at the Uline Arena. And they did that twice. you know, and the entire more, you know, and with the history of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad that people seem to overlook, and it almost seems like they overlook it purposely. You know, we're acknowledging the birth anniversary of Dr. Martin Luther King, and they always want to say, well, the meeting with Malcolm and Martin, which never took place. It's just like if you and I have met and we took a picture, and then all of a sudden the picture starts circulating around, that's the meeting. We never met. We just took a picture together. Dr. King and Malcolm, they just took a picture together. The meeting was with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Dr. King. And Dr. King came to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's home on the eve of Famous Day, 1966. And not only did he come, he brought his wife, and he brought Al Raby. And anytime you bring your wife or your woman someplace, you must feel pretty comfortable.
Actually, Al Raby was the one. Al Raby was the one who set up the meeting with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad.
And he met with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad twice. And if you notice, after that, his talk was different. He even stopped eating pork. He declared in Ohio at Sister Mary's barbecue place.
But you know, he did have a discussion with Malcolm. It wasn't a long discussion, but they did talk in Alabama.
Sure. You know, I'm quite sure they
All right, my brother, I appreciate it, man. I appreciate you straightening that out. I hope Leonard.
I look forward to the when you bring Dr. Salam on.
Oh yes, sir. Yeah.
I'll definitely be calling in that night as well.
All right, my brother. Thank you.
All right.
Brother Mantine, you know, Brother Leonard said about the FOI and the mud and whatnot. That was also what a lot of the NGEs said. The Nation of Gods and Earth, the 5%ers, have also said that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad told the FOI to go back to the people, go back into the mud and bring them out, take the lessons to the people. That's why they brought out the 120 to the masses, and that's how the 5%ers began. They started reading the lessons of the Nation of Islam and created their own organization. All right, it's been a gas. I loved it. As usual, I learned so much from this astute audience.